Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Still buffering. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are streaming on YouTube. The recording just hasn't caught up yet. Yes, ma'am.
Welcome, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Welcome to a regular Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of May 4th. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we are sitting here on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. And with that, I will go to Legislative Services for our first order of business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first order of business is approval of the agenda.
It's been moved. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item of business is adoption of the minutes. And the motion before you is that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of April 20th, 2022 be adopted.
So moved and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item of business is business arising. There is none. Public input period. We have one virtual applicant, Irene Stewart, and there are applicants in the gallery here as well. I'll just admit Irene first.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Stewart. We got a letter in, opening the door to the lobby. Welcome, Ms. Stewart. You have 3 minutes for your public input. Welcome.
3 minutes. Well, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to provide input to your discussion. And I'm speaking with respect to agenda item R1, application, the ALR application for Thane Road. My name's Irene Stewart, and I'm one of 7 board directors on the Kingburn Valley Community Association. I'm sure that by now you know who we are, given the amount of letters you've received and from our association and the information overload you've probably had to wade through on this particular report file. But suffice it to say, our community is in the electoral area B. Thane Road is our only access and our primary access and the only paved access. Our association's been writing letters to government authorities over the past several years to have them enforce their governing regulations to stop the illegal dumping by GT Farms of soil, wood debris, blast rock, and concrete and asphalt slabs on GT Farms ALR properties at the Thane Road site. And the past 5 years have been really frustrating exercise in trying to deal with government sub-authorities and the agencies, including the CVRD, but they don't communicate with one another and instead deal with issues in isolation. But meanwhile, GT Farms has taken advantage of this government disconnect to continue the illegal dumping activities. And furthermore, with GT Farms ALR designated land ownership and the right to farm, give GT Farms the trump card and the creative license to continue these dumping and excavation practices under the guise of farming. I'm a retired public servant and worked as a technician in the Ministry of Environment for 30 years. And I remember well the referral system in our regional government offices, and they relied heavily on collaborative working relationships with qualified headquarters staff for review and input. And I just don't see this referral model in government anymore. And now the pressure seems to be on the citizens to police the illegal land use activities in their own neighborhoods. At the April 13th board meeting, I heard the board being asked 2 things: that the Elliott plan be judged, considered on merit, and would the consideration be different if it was submitted by another proponent? The Elliott plan is flawed and it contains errors. And for example, the plan refers to 2 nearby aquifers as being no issue, but it fails to state that the entire area falls well within the Cobble Hill vulnerable aquifer, which is mapping done by the Ministry of Environment. And also not stated in the French plan, it was also not stated in the Elliott plan that the French plan hasn't expired and it's still valid. With regard to the second question, would the consideration be different if it was another proponent? I would contend that it's not the proponent that is being persecuted, but it's the bad land use practices that are incrementally impacting and negatively impacting the health of our watershed. All that would be required would be a change in behavior by complying with the law and embracing best management land use practices. Acting
Sorry, Irene, I have to interrupt you a little bit. It's gone over a little bit. Do you want to just wrap it up? You're okay?
That's pretty much, yeah.
Sorry.
You've got the info.
Thanks for your input and thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison, we have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You might wish to turn to the gallery to call for applicants.
Is there anyone from the gallery? Please come forward.
Well, yeah, just stand up and wave your arms and maybe sing a little. Okay. Irene's a hard act to follow. I'm Pam Miller, the president of the KVCA. I've worked with Irene as one of our directors. I am also talking about agenda item number R1. First, I want to acknowledge the work that I see you do, and I've been to these meetings virtually and face to face. I can't imagine going to having these meetings every week. I'm just telling you that. And the staff, what the staff has to do, complex tasks over a wide geographic area. So my hat's honestly off to you for that. We sent you a lot of information for this week, for this session. And so I'm not going to go over it. I've also sent you information for the April 6th, the April 13th meeting. And Irene has really hit on the impact that we've had on us because of the silos and all the work that we've put in going to agriculture, mining, environment, highways, CVRD, WorkSafe, fisheries, trying to find what the answer is, what we need to do in terms of the issues that we're dealing with. I just want to tell you personally, I'm not impacted by all of this because I live Upper Kingburn, 5 acres. So the blast rock from the Doran Quarry flying on Kingburn Road 2018 didn't impact me, nor the trucks hauling rock going at a clip down Thane Road, or the contaminated water flowing to the Caucila when it's being pumped to Heatherbank Brook from the Kingburn Quarry, nor the ravens and eagles congregating at now 4 sites where imported chicken slaughter waste is being dumped without a permit, or the asphalt, concrete, wood waste, other material near the Dugan pit. I could easily turn my back on that. But why don't I? Why can't I just live out my life on the 5 acres? My question is not about the immediate impact, but rather, what does this say about our commitment to our children and the people who will come after us? What are we leaving behind for them? Do we not care about the Caucila watershed, the waste left behind on land that once had trees on it, the impact on the wildlife that depends on a healthy environment? What are our values? Is it just to satisfy the immediate needs at all costs? Can we not, for example, work towards ensuring environmentally responsible aggregate extraction? What are we leaving behind? This is not just about this application, but the practice and presence of a local government to finally say enough is enough, and to find a way to have local experience and knowledge make a difference. So I just ask you to consider what we have offered you in our submissions and to take seriously the recommendation. 1, not to refer the application to ALC, at least until the local community has met with staff, shared our experience, so that if in the future the application is put forward, it comes with local concerns and recommendations. We did reach out to staff for a meeting last week, but we didn't receive a reply. We also recommend that staff walk with us on the train tracks adjacent to the Dugan pit, as well as the Hillbank property recently acquired by GT, to see for themselves our concerns about so-called land use, more appropriately misuse in our area. I don't think that's too much to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms.
Madam Chair, we have 2 minutes left in public input period. I don't know if you wish to consider a recommendation to extend it.
Thank you, I'll do that. Is there a motion to extend? It's been moved and second. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Evans.
Madam Chair, I'm Cliff Evans from Shawnigan Lake. Madam Chair, I'm very pleased with this commission in that they invited the ALC and Mines for a delegation today. This isn't the first time Mines have been here. Probably about 10 years ago, Mines came and they gave this committee a very good briefing, and they gave all the members a copy of health, safety, and reclamation code for mines in British Columbia. This here gave us the ammunition to be able to look through the laws and put in complaints according to laws and get things shut down. Jim Dunkley was very responsive in taking our complaints and shutting down places when they needed to be shut down, or doing inspections. So a lot of the public can't understand what's going on now. They drive down a road and pretty soon there's some rocks flying out from a pit from being blasted. This isn't right. They want to know what's going wrong. Do mines not have enough inspectors? Do they not go around and check these places? We have other complaints of a lake being built on agricultural land at the south end of Shawnigan Lake. And if you go down there, it looks more like a mining company or a Walt Disney, or so when the public travels the roads and see these things and see what's supposed to be a fish farm with a ski boat and a water slide and houses all around on it, it seems that we're slipping up some way. And maybe the Department of Agriculture, or ALC, and mines can maybe guide us to tell us what's going wrong. Why is this the Wild West? Do we need to better our land use bylaws? We need to do something, because we're losing our environment, and once we've lost it, we don't get it back again. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to give public input? Seeing no one rushing to the podium, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on the agenda is delegations. We have Mr. Sunder and Mr. Lang. Mr. Sunder is Director of Operations for the Agricultural Land Commission, and they're here to present regarding local government's role regarding mines in the Agricultural Land Reserve.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Sunder and Mr. Lang. Is Mr. Lang joining us virtually?
He was in the lobby. He's not.
Mr. Sunder,
Hello.
thank you for waiting. Are you on the WebEx with us?
I am. Hello,
Are you able
everybody.
to turn your camera on?
I can.
We want to see how messy your office is.
I'm standing, so all the mess is down below.
Uh-oh,
Mhm.
we're having some kind of emergency preparedness warning. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And do you have a presentation for us today, or are you just here to talk?
No, I don't have a presentation. I was just, I understand that the directors have some questions for us, and yeah, I'm here to hopefully answer some.
Okay, maybe are you able to just give us a brief introduction of your role and how it plays out, and then we'll come up with questions around that.
Very good.
And perhaps anything that you want to share with us on the application that we have before us today. Thank you.
Fair enough. My name's Avtar Sunder. I'm the Director of Operations for the Agricultural Land Commission. Part of my portfolio includes compliance and enforcement. And in terms of soil and fill applications, I also am part of, I'm not the decision maker, but a staff, but our commissioners make decisions on such applications, and we provide suggestions and comments to them for their consideration during these applications. So just a brief process type. The soil and fill application that's in front of you was submitted through our portal, and once decision is made by the local government, either if it's refused at your end, the application is dead, and there's no further follow up by ALC. If it is approved by the local government board, then the applications come to our commissioner panel, the island panel, but in this particular case, the soil and fill use panel, and our commissioners decide on that application, and they could either refuse that application or approve it with conditions. And typically, these applications have numerous conditions if they are approved. But it's a decision by our commissioners if and when the application is forwarded to us.
Thank you. We do have a few questions. First, I have Director Wilson, Director Yanni DiNardo. Does anybody else? And Director Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sundher. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things that you said there is that if this application is refused, and just for my own clarity here, refused by our committee here, then there would be no further action on the part of the ALC, and the application is dead. Did I get that one correct?
That's absolutely correct, sir.
Okay, and then from there, you did go on a bit further. My notes are not very good here. They're just like when I was at school, not very good. So could you, the next step after that, please? If the application is dead, you did mention something about the commissioners. Could you just clarify that for me, please?
The commissioners, if they refuse the application, then the file is with our compliance and enforcement program, and if the commissioners do not approve any further extraction, then we could follow up with other compliance and enforcement tools, which include remediation orders of the property, stop work orders. Those are some of the tools that we do have in accordance with our legislation. We can even issue penalty orders, and we have done that in the past. But then we really are working with the property owner to get the property into compliance if an authorization to extract that gravel is not successful.
Okay, great. Follow up, please, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and in that case then, let's assume then that you are then putting conditions on. How robust, how stalwart are those, is the policing of those conditions? Is it complaint driven by external neighbours, or would there be visits by your inspectors on a random basis?
In terms of if the application is approved with conditions, then we do rely on status reports that come to our branch to see to ensure compliant with those conditions. If we find that these status reports generally are required to be prepared by independent third-party consultant, and if we find that they are not compliant, then we do our own compliance and enforcement officers typically do participate and conduct inspections. The other part, our compliance and enforcement program is completely complaint-based, referral-based, and so if we do receive complaints about an operation, we do follow up with those.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Sundher. I'd like to, how many commissioners do you have and how much area do they actually have to cover?
Well, we have 17 commissioners, and for this panel, there are 4 commissioners that are responsible for the soil and fill panel. and they are responsible for all soil and fill applications across the province.
So you have 4 commissioners for the province?
No, we have 17 overall, but this is a special type of application, and specifically soil and fill type application, mainly for if somebody wants to fill their property or extract soil from the agricultural land, then it comes to this panel that adjudicates on all of those types of applications. There are other types of applications that are involved, for example, non-farm use type of applications, residential type applications that go to sort of area-based panels. We have a Vancouver Island panel that is 3 commissioners, and they look at all these other types of applications within Vancouver Island.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a follow-up if I could. How often do they come on site? Like if there is a complaint, if you're complaint driven, do they come and do they check? Because my understanding with this certain one, I personally have had a lot of complaints, but I'm in Cowichan Bay. That's not my area. And I have had people call me, and I just wondered how often these sites are checked over. I'm hearing from residents about chicken parts and different things that it's quite shocking. So I just wondered how often there actually site visits happen.
On this particular site, there have been a number of inspections that have been carried out by our compliance and enforcement officer that's based in Nanaimo.
Thank you.
I can't give you the exact number. I don't have that, but I would think at least 3 to 4 times a year as a bare minimum.
Thank you, Mr. Sunder. Director Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sunder, for coming and answering our questions. I just would like to start off by saying that I spend an inordinate amount of time on the Caucila watershed, and it is a watershed that's in deep trouble. And it is primarily in deep trouble because of land use, and more recently now climate change is exacerbating that. And so the community and Cowichan tribes and the province, water people, have been working together towards a water sustainability planning process. And I am just super interested in making sure that everyone understands how important it is. We have a very siloed and reductionist kind of system where we look at it site by site, silo by silo, and it isn't working for the Caucila. And so people need to understand the trouble it's in and try and step back and take a bigger picture. And so I hope if this is forwarded to the ALC, that is a message that goes through to the commissioners that the Caucila is a watershed in deep trouble. And so every little site counts at this point. I am interested in the fact that we have this application at all when it's kind of a complicated thing because it's partly the operation is on agricultural land and partly it's not. And I understand there's a mining permit for the part, for the mine itself. And I can't quite get my head around how much of that intrudes onto the agricultural land. But I do know I walked along the railway tracks this weekend and I did see lots of asphalt and concrete piled up all over. And I know that on neither site is that supposed to happen. And I did not see, you can see quite a bit from the railway bed. And I did not see any signs of the topsoil. When they clear, they're supposed to stockpile this, and it's all supposed to be done in the different types of topsoil so that you can use it to reclaim the site. And I didn't see very much evidence of that, but I did see a house that looked like it was going to fall into the pit, and just all sorts of things that raised my concerns enormously. And so I do not understand why this application needs to happen when there is a current mining permit in play, and why that isn't enforced with its reclamation plan that was attached to the original permit. So why do we have to have this application at all?
Very good. Thank you through the chair. I'll go regarding the Caucila. Our legislation, the Agricultural Land Commission Act, is silent on environmental impacts in terms of pollution, and so we don't look at that. There are other agencies that are responsible, in particular the Energy and Mines, and I think Mr. Denklovy from can speak to that. But we our legislation is silent on that front. But if in terms of the concerns, if those are forwarded to the commissioners along with the application, they certainly will review that. And but again, our consideration is more on the agricultural related, and we rely on other agencies to look at specifically any environmental impacts. So that's and if other legislation, it is the responsibility of the proponent to get any other authorizations or approvals in order to conduct the operation. So we leave that on them. But it is, and I was just thinking in terms of if Mr. Denklovy wants to talk about that specifically. I think he is either in the lobby or.
Director Nicholson?
Would it be possible to hear from Mr. Dunkley and then have a question period with both people, just so we can get it all clear? Because I think I don't want to be siloed in this conversation.
Yeah, like bring them in. I was just thinking that for sure. I think through Ms. Harrison, she's arranging that right now. I'm not sure he heard the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dunkley has been admitted to the room.
Mr. Dunkley, welcome. Are you able to turn your camera on?
Yes, I can do that.
There you are. Welcome.
So
I don't know if you heard everything that was going on so far, Mr. Sunter.
I've heard nothing so far.
Sorry?
I've heard nothing so far.
Okay, so Mr. Sunter has been talking a little bit about the ALC, and a question came up from Director Nicholson. So we just want to, welcome, and we should have brought you in right from the start. And the conversation has started a little bit about the role of the ALC, and mine has been brought up. So I'll let Director Nicholson repose her question, and we'll put you right on the spot right away.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming. Do you have a presentation that you'd like to do first?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm good.
So I guess what I was saying was that really appreciate that you came to answer our questions, and I'm the director for Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora. So the Caucila watershed is a big, an important water shed in our area. And we're extremely worried about the sustainability of the Caucila watershed. So I want to emphasize that land use throughout the whole watershed has negatively impacted the watershed and water, and what was once a very productive river is no longer. We don't have fish very much anymore. Climate change is exacerbating things. And so the community and the province and Cowichan tribes are moving forward with a water sustainability plan. We're very excited about it. It's not been done in the province before. It's a new tool under the Water Sustainability Act. But in the meantime, we know we need to take, we need to take a whole watershed approach with this. And we are especially keen that people, as this work is underway, that people, the regulatory agencies and the professional people that write the reports are aware of the work that's undergoing and new information that's coming, and try and take a more holistic picture of when you're dealing with a site-by-site decision. It's really important to understand the bigger context. And I think that's been sadly lacking in the Caucila, and that's what we need to do if we're going to restore and protect it in the future. So my concern on this particular one is it's complicated. We've got agricultural land and forestry land. We've got a mining permit. The mining permit, my understanding, has a reclamation plan as part of that permit. I don't really understand what how the difference between the aggregate extraction plan differs from the mining permit plans. But I do know that there's been a lot of non-compliance on the operation as a whole. I walked along, I mentioned before to Mr. Sunder that I walked along the railway tracks, and you can see into the operation pretty clearly. I walked along it on the weekend, and there's all sorts of problems with it. And one thing that really worries me is the house that's kind of perched, ready to fall into the pit, which I believe was supposed to have been moved by now, and people are living there. There's smoke coming out of the chimney. So I just can't understand why we're actually looking at this application when that is supposed to go to the ALC, which is to create a new plan when there are existing plans that haven't been complied with. And I don't understand why we aren't ensuring compliance and, a better outcome for the community.
Mr. Dunkley, did you get all that? Are you comfortable
to
answer all that? Thank you.
I did get all that. So that ranged from, worrying about the Caucila watershed to why do we continue with this when there's non-compliances. I'll start with the first one. But, we look at impacts to outside areas. Caucila itself is approximately 2 kilometers away from this site. Caucila is approximately 300,000 hectares. This is 7.5. It's pretty small. There are a lot of impacts to the Caucila. In an overview, I do not see any direct connectivity. I don't see that, water supply, sediment input is going to be affected by this. I am open to, other information. That's fine. And when a mine plan application does come in, it will be referred to the CVRD, and CVRD can have their comments for consideration. As for the non-compliances, non-compliances are everywhere in every operation, and we do our best to mitigate and control it and to get operations into compliance. Certainly, Mr. Trustwell is not our best permit holder, nor is he our worst. And, he can be very difficult to deal with, but we do have him on, the right path right now, however slowly, to improve his operations. And, that is, started with the plan for the ALC. And I expect, should that go through, we will get an updated mine plan that we can review. CVRD can comment on, public will have an opportunity to comment on, and we will consider those comments, any other information we have, and make a decision based on that.
Director Nicholson? Oh, sorry, Mr. Sunder wanted to answer a little bit too. Okay.
Yes, I didn't answer the second part of Director Nicholson's question. In regarding to compliance, most natural resource agencies, the provincial government, and that includes mines, Ministry of Environment, and Environmental Assessment Office, all of those follow sort of the compliance and enforcement continuum, which involves a lot of administrative fairness. So And that involves setting requirements to promoting, educating the person who is responsible for meeting those requirements on what they need to do, verifying compliance by inspections, and then subsequently enforcing. So it is in order to get that administrative fairness, it is a fairly long process. And that is, this framework is followed by many of the natural resource ministries and agencies. So in this regard, why do we have this application when there was non-compliance? It is also a route for how to gain compliance. If they have received authorization or approval, they will essentially be in compliance for extracting activities, and that is one approach that the property owner has. So that's one. In terms of specific conditions, Director Nicholson, that you mentioned, I'm not certain in terms of the earlier approval, but there should have been the topsoil have been kept on site, stockpiled in a certain area, and I do believe that they have that. I'm not sure if our officer is on board. He was the one that inspected it, but those types of conditions are required as sort of normal conditions that are laid down by our commissioners.
Thank you so much. I just need to get a motion to extend our delegation period. It's been moved and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And I put myself on the list, and then I have Director Kuhn, Wilson, Yanni, DiNardo. Mr. Santer and Mr. Dunkley, so I am the area director for the Kingburn community, and I don't know if you heard them speak at public input, but they've been on this for more than 5 years. The frustration started before that, and then they formed and got organized. As the director of the area, I'm really struggling to understand what the consequences are of this task that's before us of the CVRD approving or not approving, and what that looks like. And I'm also kind of asking you for your advice. Let us help you. Help us help you. So kind of, can you guide us through, because what the community would really like to see is for this operation to truly move towards remediation, and for this site to be done with all the mining activity and this activity that does not make for a good community. And can you kind of guide us through what our decisions could look like? Because I've never had this at the table before, and this is affecting a large community that really needs us to make the right decision here. And I don't see the end result or the big picture of our decision here. Can you kind of walk us through what's before us in our consequences, and what would be the best thing for this community?
I'll go first.
Thank you.
Chair. Well, it really is initially a decision by yourselves to if this is something you actually want in the community. So this is you have the option to either refuse or approve, and then it comes to our commissioners. Like I said, they can refuse or approve, and following that, it's the mines that they'll need a permit for that, and it's up to them. So there are really 3 stages of approval in order for this operation to happen. But what I can say is that if we do have a permit, an authorization at the end, we can add additional conditions. Our approvals with all the conditions are much more strict than what they were way back in 2000, early 2000s, and even more recently, the commissioners are tightening up these approvals more so in terms of putting conditions in weed control, salvaging soil, reclamation plans are required that's satisfactory to them. Some standard of ag capability that's equivalent to or better than what was there before the extraction activities are happening. We do want to ensure that the soil that is there is protected and it's not eroded away. So there's usually erosion, sediment and erosion control works that plan for that. So those are some of the conditions, and on top of that, there is a bond to make sure that the reclamation happens as was approved.
And Mr. Dunkley, do you have anything to add to that?
And yeah, similarly, you know, right now there's a permit that was a Mines Act permit that was issued in 2000. Mines Act permits issued more recently are much more comprehensive. They have better better conditions that are written to be enforceable, and you know, the spectrum of enforcement, we have increase in enforcement powers. We have recently been granted the power for administrative monetary penalties. And in addition, bonding, reclamation bonding, whether through the ALC or through the Ministry of Energy and Mines, or both, are there to ensure that compliance with the reclamation does take place. People don't want to lose their money on that, and there's an incentive there.
Thank you. Can you also, for the CVRD conditions, are we able to put items like timelines, measurable goals, so that, or to request that, so that we know that we are moving towards reclamation and meeting those targets? And can we, the part about the extra extraction, can we comment on that, and would that be respected?
Chair, yes, you can when, if and when you do refer the application to the ALC, a lot of times local governments do add, here's what we would like to see in the final approval, and the commissioners do consider that, and many a times those requirements of the local government level are followed through, or otherwise there's more conversations as to why or why not through staff that happens. But by all means, that is certainly possible. In terms of timelines, we typically have a timeline of 5 years put in place on these types of authorizations now. And that doesn't mean that they won't get extended later on. Again, that's a decision by the commissioners, but at least we have a chance to see where the project is. And so that's typically how we work in terms of any conditions that you may put on your referral.
And Mr. Dunkley, did you want to comment on my last question about the extraction?
Yeah. Similarly, when a new mine plan gets applied for and comes to us, the ministry will send it out to the CVRD for comment, and the statutory decision maker would consider those comments in his or her decision. That may be reflected in permit conditions. I can't guarantee, how that, is going to pan out, but that aspect is there. And, timelines, harder to put timelines on some of these because the extraction is market driven. If there's no market for sand and gravel, this operation is not going to be extracting anything. And you force them to extract, well, we can't do that. That said, there are 2 operations in the vicinity that have had hard deadlines put on them because they were taking so long and the community was upset. So it can be done, but it'll be looked at on an individual basis.
That's good to hear. Thank you. I guess I will allow my colleagues to ask more questions. I do have more questions, but I have Director Kuhn, Wilson, Yanni DiNardo, and then Director Nicholson. Anyone else? No? Director Kuhn, go ahead, please.
Correct me if I'm wrong, please. From what I understand, if the CVRD board declines, then we are out of the picture. Then the onus is basically on you to follow up that the procedures are followed and all that. If the CVRD approves, then we are in there, and the onus is pretty well on us as well to follow up. And so it'll be our staff time, it'll be our efforts in order to, let's say, push the process. Because I had the impression that there is a bit of a void in the services by your departments in order to make the applicant compliant. So am I right or am I wrong? Please correct me.
Yeah.
Is that a CVRD question, maybe? Or did you want to try take that question, Mr. Dunkley?
I think
Mr.
that's more
Okay.
for CVRD, yes.
Yes. So the statement that the CVRD, if we approve it and have any conditions, how does that get our involvement? Is there anyone from the CVRD who wants to verify that statement or some of the facts around that? Okay, Director Kuhn, let's hold your question.
Um,
Oh,
Sure.
Mr. McDonald, thank you.
Through
Welcome.
you, Madam Chair. Welcome. I'll do my best to answer Director Kuhn's question, but I think for the bulk of that, no. I think the answer would be no. We would be crossing authority lines. So if there's rules or things happening within that mine site, we would not have the authority to go in and enforce any of our own rules.
Mr. Sunter, go ahead if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, many times the ALC works regardless if there is a permit or authorization to do. It works closely with bylaws and soil permitting staff in local government level to assist with the non-compliance, regardless if it has an authorization on it or not. We have 7 officers that are spread across the province, and there are a lot more bylaw officers out there that we do work closely with in many local governments.
Go ahead, Mr. Director Kuhn.
Yeah, just the second part of my question. So if we decline this, then what would your task be and how would you follow up on that? Because I had the impression that we are still going to check up then, and we're going to still try to make sure that the customer is in compliance. And I think that was our general kind of dissatisfaction with the services we got from your department. So this is what I'm trying to sort out.
Mr. Sunter?
Yes. Well, our goal is to gain compliance, and if this application, approval of such application through CVRD and then through our commissioners would get them into compliance for extracting without a permit. So, if this is refused, then we have to use other compliance and enforcement tools to follow up. And again, it's not a quick process. it is a long game where if we issue an order, for example, a remediation order to clean up the site and to take it back to some agricultural capability, then there is quite a lot of work that goes into that. But regardless, there's also appeal provisions that are available to the property owner, and there's timeframes for that. So it does take some time in order to go through the enforcement tools. And similar to what Mr. Dunklevy said, we also have administrative penalties, and we have issued recently up to $100,000 in penalties to one specific site. So we are using our tools, remediation orders. We have required the removal of, for example, additional homes that were built without authorizations or approvals in the ALR.
Thank you. Next, I have Director Wilson, Yanni DiNardo, Nicholson, and then myself if there was no one else. So, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions, one for Mr. Sunder and one for Mr. Dunkley. Mr. Sunder, you've mentioned about the inspection and reports on complaints or non-compliance. Are these reports, are they filed anywhere, and are they available for public access, or are they kept confidential? And basically, can the public see them? And is there a time for submission on these? For instance, some of the reports that I look for in my particular area have a 90-day submission time. Do you have the same thing? But basically, I want to know, can the public access these and take a look at what's been reported and what's been done?
Yes, Director Wilson. These reports are available through the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy legislation, so that they are available. But we routinely share these reports with local government officials, bylaws, but they are available. We are very careful as to ensuring that privacy of the complainants is maintained, and that that type of information is redacted when we do release any of that information. But generally, they would be available to local government staff. We share those quite routinely. But if somebody else wants them, the public, they are available through Freedom of Information.
Good. Yeah, I fully understand the need for privacy. It's one of those things that you have to be very careful with. And if I could follow up with a question for Mr. Dunkley, please. You mentioned that this site is 7.5 hectares, I think that was the figure, which 15 acres. That's a pretty large area, actually. And yeah, the Caucila River is and watershed is some distance away from that, which kind of alarms me a little bit, because directly below 200 or 300 meters maybe is Aquifer 197. So we have a very short distance between the possibility of contamination coming from that site to the aquifer below. Is that something that is something that you would look at as well, the proximity of the aquifers to that area?
Well, we have to assume that pretty much on every sand and gravel operation we have, there is an aquifer of some extent below that. So the Mines Act and its regulations and the Health, Safety and Reclamation Code for mines in British Columbia, as well as permit conditions, require having spill cleanup requirements, et cetera, for spills to prevent contamination such as that.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah,
you're struggling a bit there,
Yeah.
but the reason I'm asking is that Aquifer 197 is part of my area and actually encroaches on quite a number of other areas as well. It's one of the major aquifers around there, and there are sources of contamination coming from other places who are saying basically, look, it's not just us, it's other people. And some of the things that I've heard here, now whether I honestly can't verify whether that's true or not, of chicken carcasses and things like that. That's the kind of thing that does concern me, if there is going to be that contamination leaking through into the aquifer below there. So whose jurisdiction is that? Is that mines or is that ALR? Or
Mine's jurisdiction, mine's jurisdiction is on the mine site only.
Director Yanni DiNardo?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for coming. This is really valuable information for us. We're elected to represent our residents, so we are the ones that ultimately hear face-to-face what is going on and the complaints. And I want to ask a little bit about your administrative fairness. How does that work for the residents? I see Ms. Miller and Ms. Stewart have done amazing work and have sent us letters and research and have done a very good job on informing us. How does it work from your end when residents, do they get to send in this information? Are you able to speak to them, or do you have meetings with them at all?
I can start with that. I have met with Pamela Miller and her group once when I was working out of Victoria. I get information from both Ms. Miller and Mr. Stewart on a fairly regular basis, and including probably within the last 2 hours. And that information, if it is pointing to a non-compliance, we will send to our compliance and enforcement staff to follow up on.
Thank you.
And Director DiNardo, for us, we have had numerous conversations via written form, as well as our compliance and enforcement officer has met with the association. And I'm not sure if there's 1 or 2 meetings, but our officer also has communicated with Pam Miller and the Kingburn Association.
Thank you.
Director Nicholson, can I insert myself here? Because I just wanted to ask about communication, since we're on that topic. And, Director Yanni DiNardo's question was around how are you communicating with the community? But, my question is how can we move forward today and make sure that ALC, Mines, and CVRD are communicating with each other? What would the communication look like if we, one, send approval, and then what does it look like if we deny this application? Like, is there a difference, I guess, of how you would work with the CVRD and what the CVRD's partnership with yourself would look like?
I'll go first. How we communicate mines, we are independent administrative tribunal. However, compliance and enforcement officers routinely discuss complaints and referrals amongst other compliance enforcement agencies, including mines. And that is a routine practice. We send referrals, we get referrals from other agencies, so that will continue. If this application is refused at this level, then we'll review our compliance and enforcement matrix and see what other measures that we need to take in order to gain compliance. And even if the CVRD board decides to forward this on, our commissioners may refuse it at the end, and in that case, compliance and enforcement will continue at that stage on a different path. So it really depends on if we can get compliance through an authorization or not. Then we'll take a different approach if it's not.
Mr. Dunkley, did you want to add anything?
Well, if the board refuses to send this up to, or declines to send this up to the ALC, then the the operator does not have permission from the ALC anymore to extract material from the site. Therefore, his authorization from under the Mines Act will fall as well, and we will have to work with the ALC to ensure some level of reclamation on the site. It's private land on our end. We would make sure that it is both safe and not an environmental hazard. So it'd be probably less than what the ALC would be looking for.
Thank you. And I move to Director Morrison, you have a motion of some, is this to extend our, oh, okay. Do we need to extend our delegation? Is there a motion to extend our delegation period by 10 minutes? Been moved and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, I have Director Nicholson.
Thanks. Okay, so what I think I'm hearing is that if it was forwarded onto the ALC, it allows you to if your commissioners approved it, put in more comprehensive requirements moving forward, and including more bonding or greater security payment upfront. And then that would also trigger a new mines plan, which then would do the same thing. You could be a more comprehensive permit that would have a larger bond or security, whatever you call this, the money that you need to put up front. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, Director Nicholson. That's it is. The commissioners typically now put more, like as you mentioned, comprehensive conditions on. We currently have from their old application that has expired $50,000 bond, but typically the commissioners are increasing those to approximately $20,000 bond per hectare to ensure that each hectare is reclaimed to an agricultural standard afterwards. So that's typically how much it costs to do the reclamation.
Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
So is that so does Mines also take out a bond for reclamation? And you must be sitting on a bond now, so it would be a substantially larger one. And do you take into account risk, the like track record and so forth?
We have a bond calculator that we use, and then we can play around with that a little bit if we feel that there is a higher risk in one area or another. We will also look at what the ALC bond is. There are mine sites in the province where Mines has decided not to require a bond because we feel that the ALC bond is substantially enough for the purposes. But we would look at that.
Director Nicholson.
Can I just go back to, this is probably the first question I had that I forgot to ask, was I am not really clear when you require a mining permit. And I'm assuming that there's also this aggregate extraction plan that the ALC requires if it's agricultural land on top of the mining permit. Is that how it works?
Mr. Dunkley?
It kind of works the other way around. In ALR lands, the landowner requires the authorization from the ALC prior to being able to extract, and then they would require a Mines Act permit. Quite often, these applications are done, parallel at the same time, but that is not a requirement.
So when can you tell if it's if someone's just digging a hole and then when it becomes a mine? Like when on any kind of property, when
Well, if they start bringing in processing they start bringing in processing equipment and start trucking it out and selling it, that would be a mining activity. There are situations, and the irrigation ponds are one where we don't necessarily consider it a mining activity. Um, there are lots of needs to extract material that the extracting, that you are extracting it for a separate purpose. So housing developments, etc., would have that. So we kind of consider that for an irrigation pond. However, in Mr. Trustwell's case on Kingsburn Road, that seemed to extend forever. So we stepped in to declare that a mine site.
So, right. So that becomes a problem, right?
I'm going to insert myself. I don't think I have anyone else with their hand up, but I'm still looking at this from the view of the community. We have an operator that, we could list so many infractions that the community is not confident that if we create these new plans, we're going to start the ball rolling towards compliance and towards remediation, and then ultimately, to it all being closed in a 5-year plan. So I personally, from what I've learned today and what I hear you saying, it sounds like what's best for the community is to actually deny this application. And in that case, it would resort to denial of all activity. So perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, all activity on the site would cease, and a court order would come forward for remediation, and the operator would have to comply to that. Otherwise, they would be in contempt of court, I suppose, or they can appeal it, which we've had this site going on in this manner for years anyway. It would just cease any kind of illegal activity. As far as communities concerned, I kind of see that as best case scenario for what we have right now. Can you kind of verify what I've just said? Is that how it would play out?
The minor correction, it's not a court order, stop work order that we issue. It's a stop work order issued under the Agricultural Land Commission Act. And we can, if the proponent refuses to obey the stop work order, we can get a what we call an order for compliance through the courts, and that's another application that we make. But typically, a stop work order is a lot like a stop work order issued by your building departments and that sort of thing. So it is within the ALC, and yes, they would not be authorized to extract any further further aggregate, and so therefore we need to follow our compliance and enforcement framework to get them into compliance. So all those tools, as I indicated before, stop work order, remediation order, penalty order, order for compliance through the courts, those we would sequentially try those, and those are based on two criteria: the level of impact on agricultural land, and two, the level of cooperation we're getting from the property owner in order to follow what we're directing them to do. So.
And would the old plan have any bearing anymore?
If we don't have an authorization through this process, then we would likely issue a remediation order. That's up to our chief executive officer to issue such an order, and and that's their decision, and that has additional requirements that they need to make, but typically it means remediating to an agricultural standard equal or better than what was there before.
And sorry, last question, would anything else ever, if we went down this route, would anything come back to the CBRD, like a remediation order or anything for comment?
No.
Or it would just be all in the hands of yourself?
It would be in the hands of our CEO, and but we typically share those orders with the local governments and bylaws, and typically we have conversations before the order is issued with bylaw officers that this is what we're thinking about, and so there is some referral and consultation that generally happens.
Thank you. Director Nicholson?
So just along this conversation, so what does that mean for the part that's not on ALR land then? How would you handle that?
The non-ALR, we have no jurisdiction.
Right. So how would mines deal with it?
So because there would be a change in what can be permitted under the Mines Act, we would ask for a new mine plan for that part of what is currently the mine permit area.
Okay, and so can I just ask one more question? Going back to the security, how much money does mines and how much money does the Agriculture Commission hold in security for this fellow now?
Currently, it's 50,000 that the ALC has.
And mines?
Just give me a moment and I will look it up. I'm not currently, I don't imagine it's a whole lot, but. Sorry, I just don't have it offhand.
Okay, so is it fair to say that there's not much financial incentive to comply at this point?
There is. So Mines has $11,000 as a reclamation. However, that's not the whole thing. If the operator is ordered to reclaim and does not do that, they don't just get to go take my $11,000 and do with what you will. Then we can do enhanced enforcement on that, and that goes up to orders, suspension of work orders, monetary penalties, if necessary, going to the court.
Thank you. Director Nicholson?
I really appreciate the ministry staff coming and talking today. It's been super interesting. And I think we're starting to wind down. And I just want to remind everyone that the Caucila watershed is not a large watershed. And this site is in the watershed. And while it may seem to be some distance from the main stem, the Caucila River, what we know about the Caucila watershed is everything's connected. So the groundwater and the surface water are very intimately connected. And the river, in fact, is primarily a groundwater fed system. And so it is really important, everything that we do. And a lot of water comes off the north side of Cobble Hill down onto the wetland areas that are now farmed as dairy farms and into Petrolis Creek. So it isn't really a very far distance away, and the aquifers there's a lot of unknowns about them. So we really need to be careful.
Thank you. And thank you, gentlemen, for coming today. I'll just go to Director Martman to close.
Thank you very much. And again, I appreciate the information and answering the questions on the spot. The question I have is more general in terms of your experience in these types of cases. And that I can't believe that we're the first to have you talk. So based on your experience and and given the dilemma that we have in front of us in terms of which way to go, which ones have resulted, which decisions that you know of have resulted in, I think, the prompt closing and remediation of a site? Thank you.
Mr. Dunkley or Mr.?
From my end, from my end, I'm not familiar with any site that has had its authorization revoked before they've been completed and been ordered to reclaim at that point. So this is new territory for me. There may be other people in the ministry with that experience, but I do not have that.
Director Martman, on our side, because they're going to be continuing to, or the application is to continue excavation, that period of excavation will prolong the reclamation component. If this application is not approved, then if we start on the enforcement route in terms of remediation orders, I can see that will take year to 2 years anyhow in terms of going through all of the processes that we need to in order to get that done. So it's as mentioned before, it's not a quick and easy process. It does take time.
Go ahead, Director Martin.
A follow-up, and thank you for that. That's helpful from my perspective. The other piece, though, so going back to mines, if a new application comes in for mining, how is that dealt with? I don't understand that part of it. So if it's refused and the agricultural part is remediated and they ask for more extraction permit from mines for the non-ALR part, can you?
It would look like, well, it would look like any other application we get. He would apply through the system. We would look at it. If we believe it was technically reviewable, we would send it out for referrals to the CVRD and other agencies. We would consult with local First Nations on it, and we would make a statutory decision based on the information available.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I guess my last question would be, is it okay if Legislative Services shares your emails with the committee? And if we have specific questions, other questions to our area, if it's okay if we contact you?
Yeah, by all means.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thanks for coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
It was very helpful.
Good luck with the decision.
So helpful, I'm more confused than ever, but thank you. Have a good day, and thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Moving on to our next order of business. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is correspondence. The first item, C1, is a grant and aid request from Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $2,500 be provided to the Shawnigan Lake Community Association to support community building, business networking events, and coordinating of volunteer groups. First event, July 8th, 2022, for the whole community.
It's been moved and second. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Thank you,
Director
Madam.
Martman?
Could I suggest we take 5 minutes?
Yeah, but can we just, we'll do it after
Okay,
the grant.
sorry.
needs. Thank
Fair
you.
enough. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item, C2, is a grant and aid request from Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $3,000 be provided to Mill Bay and District Conservation Society to support the purchase of a shipping container to store the equipment they use for the salmon project. Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item, C3, is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area B. Recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Duncan Cowichan Chamber of Commerce to support the year-round visitor servicing operations of the Cowichan Regional Visitor Center.
It's been moved. Second. All in favor? Motion carries. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item is C5. It's a grant and aid request for Electoral Area D. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D Cowichan Bay in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Duncan Cowichan Chamber of Commerce to support the year-round visitor servicing operations of the Cowichan Regional Visitor Center.
It's been moved and second. All in favor? Motion carries. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last item, item C6, is a grant and aid request from Electoral Area E. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area E Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora, in the amount of $2,000 be provided to the Duncan Cowichan Chamber of Commerce to support the year-round visitor servicing operations of the Cowichan Regional Visitor Center.
It's been moved and second. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much for the long delegation period. We will take 10 minutes. We'll see you at 3:17. Is that right?
It's just better to say 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Getting coaching here. See you in a bit. Thank you.
I've done that, and then I've...
Welcome back, everyone. First, I would like to apologize. I failed to welcome alternate director Brian Harrison, who's here for Mill Bay Malahat. Welcome, alternate director Harrison. We also missed, we're trying to speed things up here. We missed item C4. We'll do that right away. And we're going to be altering the agenda a little bit, bring up item 10 to report 7. So first we'll go to C4. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C4 is a grant and aid request, Electoral Area D, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D Cowichan Bay in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Community Workshop Co-op for the purpose of acquiring tools and educational resources for the educational programs being developed at the Cowichan Community Workshop Co-op.
It's been moved and second. All in favor? Motion carries. Ms. Harrison, next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item is information. Item IN1 is the minutes of the Electoral Area Mill Bay Malahat Advisory Planning Commission meeting of April 7th, 2022, and those are for information.
Thank you. Any comments or anything about that? Not seeing any. Next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item are reports, and the first report, item R1, is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number ALR 21B01 for 1715 and 1745 Thane Road, PID 028342119 and PID 001740849. And this item was referred from the April 13th, 2022 board meeting. And the applicant is in the lobby. I'll just admit them.
Mr. Elliott, are you here? Welcome, Mr. Elliott. Well, we'll let Ms. Wright, did you have a bit of a presentation that you wanted to share with us, or just maybe a slight introduction?
Sure. I'll just do a slight introduction, just summarizing everything to date very quickly. So the aggregate extraction plan that was submitted with this application was prepared to meet the requirements of the ALC policy P-13, entitled Reclamation Plans for Aggregate Extraction, which outlines the best management practices for aggregate extraction, including closure and reclamation of land. So after considering the information in the AEP, as well as the information presented today by the delegation, from the ALC as well as the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation, staff are recommending that the application be forwarded to the ALC, who will determine if the AEP is in compliance with the ALC Act and applicable regulations, and will place the appropriate conditions on the closure plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask you to lower your presentation so that we could see everyone? And I'll check if Mr. Elliott is in the meeting now. He's in the meeting. Mr. Elliott, welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Is there anything you would like to add about the application?
Yes, I do so tentatively because what I have heard thus far does have a few inaccuracies in our statements, but I also have a request as I start out here, and ultimately this will summarize into a perspective on what is trying to be accomplished here. This should take no more than a couple of minutes. Is that suitable?
Do you mind turning your camera on, because I don't believe you actually end up on our recording unless people will just hear your voice, but they won't know where it's coming from.
And I appreciate that, Chair, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I do respectfully decline.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. To the committee, through Madam Chair, and with all due respect, there were a number of inaccuracies that I would like to provide information towards. And first and foremost, I am making the heartfelt request that we tone down the rhetoric and that we stop using terms that are not applicable to this scenario. Case in point, most frequently the terminology between compliance and illegal are being interchanged, and those are simply not factual. Those are not interchangeable words in this context. So, from starting out with the most apparent concern, which is groundwater, water contamination, and movement thereof, within the AEP and within all available literature, including the intrinsic vulnerability drastic aquifer evaluation system that was co-sponsored by the CVRD, the area of the Dugan Pit, including the two subject parcels that were just up on the screen, are classified as being in a low vulnerability zone. So this was actually developed by the MOE as well as the CVRD staff. As such, the CVRD staff is indicating that that area is low vulnerability. Now, when we look at the respective aquifers that are in the ground underneath this operation, First and foremost, we see the aquifer that is of primary concern, which is actually aquifer number 197, being Cherry Point. And yes, it is a partially confined to fully confined sand and gravel aquifer. We, being the location of the Dugan Pit, is actually on the southwest fringe, where the aquifer is coming to daylight. That portion of the aquifer is near surface and does actually constitute some of the sand and gravel materials that are on surface there. This material is apparent both at this site as well as the site to the northeast, and much of the lands to the north and east of the site as well. Now, with aquifer 198 being a fractured sedimentary rock aquifer, that is a deeper shale stone that is being subject to tectonic pressures and as such is dominated by fracture flow. That aquifer actually has a low vulnerability to it. So cumulatively, we have a ranking system that was co-developed by the CDRD, which says that the site is a low vulnerability to contamination. And then we also have the fringe of an aquifer that has some hydraulic connection, probably not much, but some hydraulic connection to the rest of aquifer 197, and then the aquifer 198 being a fractured sedimentary aquifer at depth. Now, those are the transport mechanisms. When we talk about contamination, you also need a source. And this is one thing that I'm a little bit confused by. What is the source? And I've heard a couple of things being said, the quote unquote illegal importation or dumping of soil. And that is ultimately not a true statement. Soil is allowed to be brought in for mine reclamation as per the Mines Act, as well as chicken guts. Now, other than Director Martin, has anybody worked with farm mortalities? Okay, great, fantastic. You know that farm mortalities are not a pleasant business. Farm mortalities are typically dealt with on site. They are incorporated into compost operations or they are incinerated. In the larger scale of a dairy operation, they are constantly looking for nutrients for which they can process and then apply to their fields so that they can grow crops, so that they can feed their cattle, so that they can produce milk. Now, when we're talking about chicken guts, we're also talking about a 25, almost 30-year program partnership with a local island farm poultry that this farm has been in collaboration with them in a long-standing agreement that precedes any kind of regulation that governed this practice, whereby the farm would receive chicken guts incorporated into their compost operations in the exact same way that they would incorporate mortalities. And ultimately what would come out of that is a nutrient-rich compost that would then be field applied in subsequent years. So those processes are being permitted and undergoing that permitting process as we speak. Well, maybe not precisely as we speak, but soon enough.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Sorry.
oh, still going here. What we have been looking at is whether or not the mine operation, the aggregate extraction operation, will be pursuing closure. And that is entirely what the farm operator is intending. He is in the process of handing off his dairy operation to the family, the intergenerational farm, and for which he would, his son is not interested in moving earth. He's not of that sort. So he is looking to get these lands sorted to a prime agricultural status, being a level land with good or well to rapidly draining soils, preferably not rapidly, but well draining soils. That will have an organic cap of anywhere between 0.5 to 1 meter. And that organic cap will be an organic rich silty loam, largely stone free, maybe up to about 5%. And that will provide a suitable agricultural base for the subsequent production of foodstuffs on those lands.
Thank you.
Now, When we see those lands in that state, we're looking at a robust ecosystem. We are looking at a robust ecosystem that also sequesters carbon, that is securing food production in a local sense, not just for this farm operator, but let's say, look down the line and say in the future that another type of farm production method is pursued on these lands. So we are indeed taking this farm operation, the aggregate extraction. We are looking to level the lands to achieve a constant grade to the north and ensure that these lands are both accessible and have suitable soil profiles to continue in perpetuity, not just now, but in perpetuity, as prime agricultural land. And ultimately, when we're talking about which route we will take, be it the approval or not approval, forward or not forward, if the aggregate extraction is disallowed through non-approval on the ALC lands, that will actually result in a topography limitation. And the topography limitation, unfortunately, will not allow the farmer operator to achieve prime agricultural land status. So we're actually looking at whether or not you are going to support the creation of prime agricultural land, or allowing this site to not be brought to prime agricultural land status. And that's what we're looking at right now. Do you want prime agricultural land or not? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for butting in there. It's hard with to know when you were done. Thank you so much. Is there anybody on the committee that has questions for Mr. Elliott or for Ms. Wright? Director Martman?
Just a comment about the use of the offal, or how do you dispose of offal on farm practices. And there's quite a code of practice and also requirements under slaughter on how you do it. I'm more familiar with cattle, but you are required to bury your offal or incinerate, but bury is the most common on practice. And so spreading of offal on surface areas isn't something that would be permitted under the current regulations. Just to correct the record.
To Director Martman, through the chair, I'm sorry, I believe that my message was mistaken there. I did not say we are applying offal to the fields. We are incorporated into compost. It would be composted, and then the compost would be applied to the field.
Thank you. I have Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Wright. So we've been contemplating this file for a little while now. You've heard committee and professionals and the likes, not just a couple of weeks ago, but today. And I think I heard you in your brief presentation reiterate the written recommendation in the staff report. So you're essentially today, after the information that we've all heard today, standing by the recommendation that it be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission.
Through the chair to Director Morrison, that's correct. We staff are still recommending option 1.
Director Nicholson?
I'm wondering if staff would be prepared to meet with the community to go through their concerns and recommendations so that we can have an more informed response.
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, I believe I'd like some input from Ms. Sheriff on this. Staff are always willing to meet, though, with community groups on certain topics. However, in this instance, I don't know when it would be most appropriate to do so, whether that be before a decision is made or after, and explain the CVRD staff perspective on this. So if Ms. Cheryl could or is willing to also weigh in on this.
Ms. Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through you to Director Nicholson, certainly if the committee wanted to, they could make a recommendation to the board that a public information meeting be held. I would have concerns with staff being asked to meet with a specific interest group in relation to an application, just given the the element of procedural fairness. There, maybe other interested parties, and certainly the applicant would, want to be able to, hear any of the exchanges and provide comment or correction if there is any misinformation that's provided. It may become fairly complex. I think to date you have received a significant amount of correspondence from the community group. I'm not sure what additional information the community group would provide than has been provided to date. And I would feel somewhat uncomfortable about asking staff to adjudicate the concerns of the neighborhood on, in this particular situation. It puts staff in a bit of a difficult position.
Thank you, Ms. Treff. As the director of the area, I do have a motion that I'd like to put forward, but before, does anyone have any more questions for the applicant or staff? Ms. Director Nicholson.
I don't want to take us off course from where you're going with this, but we all received some input from the Kingburn Association, including, I think from Irene Stewart, a list of questions, very specific questions related to the closure plan. So I am wondering, I think the community deserves to have those questions answered. And so I'm wondering if that is a part of where you're going, or if that's something that maybe we could ask Mr. Elliott right now.
Sure, it looks like he's got his hand raised. If you want to read.
Absolutely. To Director Nicholson through the chair. I have actually been working with the proponent in this scenario since 2015 in one capacity or another, and have been witness to many of the complaints that have been put forward, as well as the offensive the things that were taken as offensive. And I do have perspective on many of these. And for example, let's say the fly rock that's coming from blasting, that was consequent to a lackluster subcontractor who is no longer working for the organization. So there are nuanced aspects to this that if you state them all in a row, they sound like a litany of failures. However, contextually, many of these are operational realities of working in this sector, including the purported contamination of Petrolus Creek, which was actually not the case. That was not contaminated water. It was water that had a silt content to it, so it was rainwater that was being pumped out of an area that was not groundwater connected, and it was being put into the local ditching system, which is yet another perfectly acceptable practice within the regulations. So we are looking at some perspectives that have different interpretations depending on where you're standing, and I genuinely appreciate that. However, I would like to emphatically state that over the time period that I have been working with the proponent, nobody has reached out to me as the qualified professional working with this operator. I have received no communication.
Thank you. Director Nicholson, follow up?
Well, maybe we should refer this to the next EASC so the Kingburn Association has an opportunity to contact Mr. Elliott.
Well, I think that this has come before us a couple times, and there's still time towards the board meeting. As the director of the area, and from what I've heard today and from what we've had the agency standing here before us, I would move option 2 if I had a seconder, and I can read it out should we wish. You're seconding it? Second by Director Wilson. That recommended to the board the application number ALR 21B01, 1715 and 1745 Thane Road, PID 028342119 and PID 001740849, not be forwarded to Agricultural Land Commission. And I guess my comment would be that I listened, and from what I've learned, I feel like this is the best option for the community at this time, and we had the agencies here who have the authority to implement the next steps, and I believe that this would be in the best interest of the Kingburn community and those around, including any kind of water protection. And we have until next week to receive input about it, and so thank you for seconding that motion. And do I have any speakers to the motion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor? Those opposed? Director Martman opposed. Motion carries. Next order of business, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on the agenda is R2, and it's a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number RZ21C01 for 3570 Telegraph Road, PID 010427171. And this item was referred from the April 27th, 2022 board meeting. I have the applicant, Jane Barton-Gregg, in the lobby. I'll just admit her.
Welcome, Ms. Gray. And Ms. Boyle, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, I'll keep it short. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep it short since I'm sure that you all remember this application from the last EASC meeting. So perhaps we can move to the next slide. The property is located in Cobble Hill, just off of Telegraph Road, across from Arbutus Ridge Golf Course. The property is approximately 2 hectares in size and currently zoned RR2, Rural Residential 2 zone. And the land use designation is residential within the current official community plan and rural residential within the local area plan. For the past 15 years, the owner of the property has been offering 2 long-term rental accommodations and 4 short-term rentals, in addition to using the property as a primary place of residence. Currently, the owner resides in the principal residence, in which there are also 2 additional dwellings used for long-term rental, and the owner operates 4 short-term rentals for temporary tourist accommodation. 2 of these rentals within the primary residence and 2 are located in separate buildings. So the current use of the property for single-family dwelling, 2 long-term rental suites, and 4 short-term rental units doesn't comply with the zoning bylaw. I know that we have all received new information from the applicant recently with an amended development proposal. As this new information was only received quite recently, I feel that staff don't have time to fully review the implications of the new proposal, so we can't comment on the specifics. I will say that the overall intention of the development is still to rezone the property from the RR2 rural residential zone to a new site-specific zone to allow for both long-term residential dwelling as well as short-term temporary tourist accommodation. So any questions about kind of the overall development, I can still try my best to answer. I also just have noticed that there's been some conversation and references made as to how the modernized official community plan will influence the zoning on this property and other properties. I just thought I might clarify that the adoption of the modernized official community plan will not amend the existing zoning bylaws in place. Any zoning bylaw amendments will need to be through rezoning applications or the implementation of the modernized zoning bylaw and not the modernized official community plan. So we can move to the next slide, which has my previous recommendation based on the information I had at the time that the staff report is drafted, but Electoral Area Services Committee, you may wish to make a different recommendation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Boyle. I had Director Wilson. Is there anyone else? Or welcome, Ms. Gray. Is there anything you'd like to add? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, that's better. No, Chloe covered it in that the slight modifications that we've provided to the planning group would allow my long-term elderly tenant, Ben, to continue to have a home. And we're excited about this. I feel much better about it. And so my understanding is planning will consider it and we will tweak it. But that is our intention, is to provide a home for Ben, who would be homeless without the accommodation here, subsidized accommodation he gets, and also would continue to support tourism in the Cowichan Valley, which is my intention.
Thank you. I go to Director, sorry?
I was just going to speak to the modifications to the building as well, and that was primarily the reason for the option that we've presented as option 3 was to address the building code requirements, which are quite considerable given the age of the house. So this is looked upon as a compromise to continue with the long-term dwelling units and to continue with the tourist accommodations.
Thank you so much. I turn to the Director of the area.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This one has been on the cards for a long time, and as Ms. Boyle pointed out, this is new information and a new request that has come through from the applicant, which seems to have some merit here. So I would like, please, to put forward and I have been speaking with Mr. Elf and with the building inspectors as well, and I'd like to put forward the following motion, if I can get a seconder, please. I've got to put the phone, of course I do. Okay, in light of the in light of the very recent new information and request that staff have received from the applicant, number 1, the application RZ 21C013570 Telegraph Road, Cobble Hill, PID 010427-171, be once more referred back to staff so that evaluation of the new information can be carried out. And number 2, that prior to the next EASC submission of this application, staff arrange a meeting with the applicant and consultant to discuss the situation going forward. I move that, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Do you want to speak to the motion, or can I ask a question?
Ask a question.
You're good. I guess to staff in general, was it ever considered that this whole application or like it could have been put on hold until I feel like this is a way that we are moving towards having accommodations like this, and where we could actually decide what would trigger, what would be considered just an Airbnb, and then what would trigger a bigger jump towards commercial or towards what would fall under that umbrella, like lavender farms and that kind of thing. So I feel like this application's going to go forward, but then is it precedent setting, or is it actually going, I'm not sure it's going to reflect what our modernization is going to come out as. Is that a clear question? Is my thoughts being portrayed here? Ms. Charles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly this application should be evaluated on its own merits. Every time you receive an OCP amendment or rezoning bylaw application, you should consider the context for that particular application. There may or may not be policy that's in effect that will help guide you. So review this application on its own merits. Certainly during the modernization process, there will be a focus on various types of accommodation, and you will, through your modernized policies and regulations, be able to appropriately zone for various types of uses like short-term accommodation or secondary accommodation, long-term accommodation, whatever it is. And so there's some latitude in, how that's looked upon in through official community plans and through zoning regulations. I would suggest that there's probably significantly less latitude with respect to the BC Building Code and how the BC Building Code would view different types of occupancies. And so there's going to be a lot less wiggle room with respect to, commercial type accommodation under the BC Code, and Mr. McDonald could add to that further if he wishes.
Ms. Boyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Charles. I will also note that in terms of whether this is considered a more commercial or more residential land use, it's not only the zoning bylaw and our OCP policies, but also provincial servicing requirements that are taken into consideration. So in this case, the water servicing and the sewer servicing are both considered as commercial uses by the province, the respective agencies. And in terms of our own zoning bylaws, we do tend to have we tend to say, residential is this very specific thing, and then commercial can be anything beyond that. And obviously there's a gray area and it's a scale from, one single family residential dwelling to a giant hotel on the other side. But that line has to be drawn somewhere. And in the zoning bylaw and the OCP policies, that line is drawn at a single family dwelling with one kitchen and used for bed and breakfast rooms without kitchens in those rooms. So that line is drawn at that point. And beyond that, that's when you start having provincial servicing requirements that are commercial in nature. And that's also when you start running into a lot of conflicts in terms of the OCP policies and in terms of the zoning regulations for residential use. And it doesn't make sense so much as a residential use right now. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you for that explanation. Yes. And I have Director Morrison and then Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just sort of to reiterate a little bit of what Ms. Charles had said, I think that, we're right to be dealing with this as a one-off, we refer to them as spot zones. And if, the community and the director for the area are supportive of this for that region, then, we can certainly proceed with the new information. I'm glad that it's being referred back because it's not best practice for us to make decisions when there's new information in the wings and it's not all before us. But I'd also suggest that we don't have to confuse this with, the MOCP and the new zoning and the likes. I've got a short-term rental zone in a comprehensive development right next to my community. It's not something that we have to wait for, or we can make decisions like we will be making when the new information is before us, and we can, where appropriate, we can make the decisions and implement things, put them in place as they're required. So I'll support the resolution to refer back to staff so that this can move forward in a expeditious fashion. Thank you.
I'll just go to Ms. Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also wanted to note that since this did arise from a zoning bylaw infraction file, it's also would be good to kind of deal with this and progress with the application potentially sooner rather than later. But that should, with the modernized zoning bylaw process, it be considered that this type of temporary tourist accommodation would be permitted as a residential use as opposed to it being along the lines of a more tourist commercial use, and that these separate tourist commercial units be permitted on residential properties under residential use that won't prohibit or preclude the applicant from having that new zone at the time of the modernized zoning bylaw whenever those new zoning regulations are applied. And it at that point, the current property in question can be under that zoning. If that helps. Does that help explain things as well?
Director Kuhn?
I just wonder, what are we gaining by referring this application back to staff? Why not just go for the option that is recommended and just get it over with? I can't see. Is it a worthwhile delay, or what actually is the advantage of that?
Ms. Boyle?
From what I understand, the application as it's being proposed with the new zone for a multi-family dwelling in terms of BC building code regulations would be prohibitively expensive and potentially would mean that certain people living in the residence right now would not be able to live there any longer. So the applicant has hired a professional land use planning consultant to see if there's a way to come up with a different zone, comprehensive development zone, that would allow for the same density and the same uses, but the configuration might be slightly different so that the building code restrictions or regulations to meet compliance would be more financially feasible and would not result in any evictions of current tenants. So that's my understanding.
Thank you. Director Wilson, to close.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And that's the whole intent of this being referred back to to staff again is because there has been a new, not proposal as such, but certain new information that should be considered in this particular case. And this will give the staff time to look at this. It only came forward on Friday. It's not been time to consider it fully and the implications. And the staff have been as helpful as they can in this whole process. And from what I can make out from Ms. Giroff and Mr. McDonald, they're quite willing to go ahead, take a listen to what the applicant and the consultant has to say and consider everything that's come forward and then bring it back to again. The intent purely is to give us a little bit more time to discuss what the applicant has asked for here, and that's all. There's no other reason for it, so I would ask for support on this one. Thank you.
Okay, so I will not see any other questions, and we'll see you again, Ms. Gray. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. See you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you. Next item of business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on the agenda is R3. It's a report from Development Services Division regarding Stillhead Distillery, located at 105-5301 Chester Road. Liquor license, lounge area endorsement, and capacity increase. The applicant, Brenna Coalbank, is in the lobby. I'll just admit them.
Welcome, Ms. Coalbank. The director of the area welcomes you, and she has moved the motion. I'm not sure we're going to have any questions for you. Do we have a seconder, Director Morrison? Do we mind removing the presentation so that we can see? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. So, Ms. Colbank, we have moved that it be referred with no comment. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Next item of business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number SA21C09 for Gallier Road, PID 008080755. And the applicant is in the room.
No, Cam Williams is the engineer. I don't know if he's in the lobby or not.
No.
He was trying to log, couldn't get in apparently.
Okay, so we have an applicant here in the gallery and the engineer. Will you be answering questions? You'll be able to come up to the podium, and first we'll have staff present the application.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this staff report asks the EASC to consider a parcel frontage exemption request and park dedication requirements for a proposed 35-lot subdivision on Gallier Road in Area C. Just as a quick background, the CD10 zone in the South Cowichan zoning bylaw number 3520 was recently amended to allow for an increase in density in this zone, provided that a vegetation buffer of at least 50 meters measured from the western boundary of the neighboring industrial property to the east is maintained. This is relevant at some point in my quick presentation. So for consideration first, proposed lots 8, 9, 10, 15, and 16, which are highlighted on the site plan there, do not meet the required 10% parcel frontage required by Section 512 of the Local Government Act due to the configuration of the proposed subdivision and given their locations on the curve of the proposed access road. So staff have visited the site and there appear to be no access or topography concerns, and staff have recommended the parcel frontage exemption. Secondly, under Section 510 of the Local Government Act, park dedication is required since the proposed subdivision is more than 3 lots and the proposed lots are less than 2 hectares in area. And the recently adopted bylaw number 4404 has removed the requirement for the vegetation buffer to be transferred to the CVRD and held as parkland. So therefore, the Parks and Trails Division has recommended acceptance of 5% cash in lieu of parkland at the current market value assessment of the existing parcel to be consistent with that recently adopted bylaw. And I will leave it at that. And staff's recommendations are on the next slide, I believe. So thank you.
Thank you. I move to the director of the area, Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd like to move option 1, please. And I can read it if necessary.
I think Ms. Harrison can. Okay. Go ahead, Director Wilson.
Thank you. That it be option 1, that it be recommended to the board, 1, that proposed lots 8, 9, 10, 15, and 16 in subdivision application number SA21C09, Gallier Road, PID 008080755, be exempted from the minimum parcel frontage requirement in accordance with Section 512 of the Local Government Act. And number 2, that 5% cash in lieu of park dedication be accepted for subdivision application number SA2109, Gallier Road, PID 008080755, to satisfy Section 510 of the Local Government Act. I move that.
Director Nicholson and then myself.
I actually have some questions. The buffer that's along the backside, so who would ultimately own that property and look after it?
So through the chair to Director Nicholson, so the ownership of those lots are now would be part of each of those proposed lots along that part of the subdivision. So if I could ask Mike, I think, to put the subdivision plan back up, and just the previous slide, please. Thank you. Okay, I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit, but if you, like, for example, the eastern lots from 22 down, they're all long strips that incorporate the vegetation buffer as part of each of those lots. So part of the CD10 zone requirement is that they will have to enter into a covenant or another legal document that would satisfy the CVRD to protect that vegetation buffer and maintain it as vegetation buffer.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
Yeah.
So be covenanted, protected, and part of the lots along that side. Thank you.
That is correct.
Director Harrison? You need to unmute.
Yeah, just curious to know where the closest park is for that particular to that subdivision, because in some of the subdivisions we've seen, they put in tot lots so that there's a place for the kids to play rather than going out on the road. And in that section, if they're going down to Cobble Hill, they have to go along Fisher Road, which is extremely dangerous and hazardous for kids to be walking, riding bikes, and carrying on down through there. So this 5%, maybe Mr. Barcor can answer it, isn't going to do a heck of a lot for those people in that area. So is there a place for the kids to play, or are they going to be, what, out on the street?
Mr. Farquhar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Alternate Director Harrison. Immediately next door to the west is Gallier's Park, a wonderful little park in Cobble Hill that has a sport court, playground, and grassy play area. So the new residents in this proposed subdivision will have a short, safe walk to a wonderful park next door.
Perfect.
I'm going to insert myself here. I too was a little surprised with the subdivision layout, not having any connectivity from the other areas, and a 5% in lieu is not, it doesn't produce good future parkland necessarily, not very quickly. It's always, as far as community goes, I'm always hesitant to take that amount, and it seems so small compared to what a piece of land could create for you. So looking at that, the layout there, you have all these other subdivisions as well, and a possible one below it. Did planning or anyone consider that we might want to connect these neighborhoods in the future?
So through the chair to Chair Acton. The lots to the rear are privately owned. If, like, to the south, is that what you mean? I'm not entirely clear.
Going across
If you bring up the
to the west,
the lot drawing, I saw a lot. Well, are we north on this? I see lots around it that might have future, almost all around it that might have future development. Where they would have subdivision, but we haven't created any connectivity, and I can see with the other areas, it's too late. But what happens is you end up people creating them anyway, and then you have people quite upset that people are walking through there. So I think it's nice to create those right-of-ways and connectivity, like little paths for the future. Mr. Farquhar, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as part of this application, the Cobble Hill Parks and Trails master plan was reviewed, and certainly there was nothing indicated in the master plan about connectivity from this particular parcel, understanding that we have our Galliers Park to the immediate west, the residential area west of that along Holland Avenue would be the more, say the more direct route in terms of connectivity down towards the village area. So there wasn't necessarily anything heading to the east, because that's heading into the industrial area of Cobble Hill, and industrial areas and walkway pathways don't necessarily mix well. So certainly it was looked at, but felt that heading back along Galliers and into the residential area was sort of the safest way for future connections versus a separate connection being identified trying to go to the east, or down the Fisher Road, which also sees quite a bit of traffic as well. So, for those reasons, a connection opportunity was not pursued.
Well, that said, can you point out where the schools are around from that area? Because I know there's been issues with connectivity to the French school off of Fisher Road.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any schools close by where kids would be walking to school?
The closest elementary school is Cobble Hill, but it would not be along Fisher Road that one would be looking at a connection. It would be further south. So again, coming back around onto Holland Avenue down to the village area, the master plan talks about maybe opportunities along Hutchinson Road or a little bit farther south in terms of future connections. So again, from this particular development, trying to identify a separate little route out was not something that was seen matching up with the master plan for the community.
Any further questions? Director Nicholson. Oh, are you on there? Okay. Do you want to go for close? We'll let Director Nicholson go. Okay, Director Nicholson and Wilson to close.
Okay, so I'm looking at the zoning map, and I see that Gallier Road seems to end at a lot that's in between two industrial lots, and I'm wondering if that's the one that we have been discussing rezoning application on for I can't remember the person's, the applicant's name. Is that the one? Maybe Director Wilson knows.
The McKinnon.
Yeah. Is that the property?
It conjoins, pardon me for interrupting, Madam Chair, it conjoins together with Fisher Road, and then the McKinnon one is above that, slightly to the east of that, but yeah, in that area there.
So I guess my question then is there any opportunity to create a pathway? I remember he said he was very open to helping on the community pathway front, and I wondered if there was an opportunity to make a pathway from Gallier Road through to the industrial to Fisher Road, because I think that would be a long-term asset.
It would be, but perhaps I could ask what the we're going to get into a discussion here, which I don't really want to. What would be the reason for putting a path through there to Fisher Road?
Connectivity.
Connectivity to what? A dangerous bendy road? Blind bends?
Well,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
Director Wilson, I think that what Director Nicholson is saying is, to me, when I look at this application, there could be a missed opportunity, because the future of Fisher Road, I think the community wants it to evolve. So it could evolve to a safe place and to where there's connectivity and a means for those kids who live in that this new subdivision can walk to Cobble Hill safely one day. I'm sure that vision can be realized. But I think I'm on the same lines as Director Nicholson. people have spent time on this subdivision, so I'll support it. But I think there could be a missed opportunity happening here. But
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. If
that's
I
it.
could do it. This, we're talking about the parkland acquisition being a very, very small amount. It's not. It's based on $3 million, which is the latest valuation for this land. The original valuation was $1 million, which would have been $50,000, which is still a lot of money. That parkland dedication is now $150,000. That's a lot of money. Now, one of the questions that I asked of Mr. Farquhar, and we have talked about connectivity, please don't think it's not within my mind, because it is. One of the problems with the parkland dedication money is that you cannot use it for anything else apart from parkland acquisition. We cannot use it for connectivity. However, we may be able to use it to purchase land to make a pathway, and that's the whole point about it. This money is there. It's 3 times as much as what it used to be, and basically, I'm sorry, I think we're getting off the question here. There's the recommendation here. So I'm moving option number 1. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also looked at this with connectivity in mind as well, and it's too bad it couldn't be a little bit more creative, but I hear from Mr. Farquhar that this is something in their parkland, their long-term development of their parklands. I would suggest that we want transportation and connectivity, and this didn't, and I understand there's industrial park and that, but I will vote for it because the area director is in favor, but I think there could be missed opportunities as well.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to comment? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we'll take 5 minutes here. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Welcome back. Our next item of business is R5. Welcome back. We're on to R5.
Thank you, Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Harrison.
Sorry.
We'll get her to read it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on the agenda is R5. It's a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 21B07 for 2109 Satira Road, PID 007-181-493, 007-181, and 523. And there is a recommendation before you. Would you like me to read it? That it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 21B07 for 2109 Sartira Road for PIDs 007-181-493 and 007-181-523 be issued, subject to the consolidation of lots 7 and 8, Block 1, Shawnigan Lake, Suburban Lots, Malahat District Plan 1587.
It's been moved and seconded. Welcome, Ms. Woods, and welcome, Mr. Hoffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will just kick off with a bit of an overview of this. So the subject property is comprised of 2 legal parcels, lots 7 and 8, towards the end of Sarita Road. The existing dwelling currently straddles across the property line between lots 7 and 8. It is estimated that the house was built in around 1968 before the adoption of the first zoning bylaw in Shawnigan Lake, and we do have some renovations, some permits for renovations in 1993. If you can just forward to the next slide there. Thanks, Mike. So the applicant is proposing to enclose the area above and below the existing deck, as well as replace the existing staircase. The area above the deck will be turned into a sunroom, and the area below will be a storage area with no habitable area. The works will take place on the existing footprint, and no further encroachment into the setback is proposed. However, obviously, as the existing dwelling was constructed within 15 meters of the watercourse prior to the bylaw, a development variance permit must now be issued prior to undertaking these works. There were some site photos taken that were attached to the staff report as well. And with that, basically, it's just the recommendation that it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 21B07 be issued subject to the consolidation of lots 7 and 8.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. And as the director of the area, Mr. Hoffer, I'd like to inform you that I Google Earth stalked you, and your foreshore looks beautiful. So thank you for leaving it in place.
We need to do a
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and at least I think I got the right spot. So it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any more questions for staff or the applicant before we call the question? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hoffer and Ms. Woods.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee.
Moving on to R6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is item R6. It's a report from Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 22E01 for 4461 Riverside Road, PID 009533144. And the applicant, Chi Hawks, is in the lobby. I'll just admit them.
Welcome, Chi Hawks. Are you? Yeah. And Ms. Suderman? Ms. Suderman, did you want to give us any kind of introduction or presentation?
Yes, I would like to introduce the application if you have time for that. I'm application DVP 22E01 for the property located at 4461 Riverside Road is an application for variance to the setback requirements of the Area E zoning bylaw, specifically in section 5.18, which requires that no building or structure shall be located within 30 meters of the top of bank of the Caucila River, and section 7.3, the setback provisions of the A1 zone. So as you can see in these maps and illustrations, 4461 Riverside Road is located at the intersection of Caucila and Riverside Road, just to the west of the community of Cowichan Station. The lot is roughly triangular in shape, with one property line following the line of the Caucila River, while another is along Riverside Road and the third is along Caucila Road. So it is an A1 zone property located within the ALR. The existing house dates back to the turn of the previous century and is estimated to be more than 110 years old. The applicants are applying for a variance to permit them to upgrade the foundation, which is currently a crawl space, in part of the house where they also wish to add an extra bedroom on the second level. This part of the house is the furthest from the river and from the top of the bank. It's the opinion of the qualified environmental professional who reviewed the application that there is no risk to the riparian area posed by this modification to the house. Next slide, please. This diagram, prepared by a registered surveyor, shows the relationship between the existing house and the top of bank of the Caucila River. As you can see, the existing deck and northeast corner of the house are located to the closest to the top of the bank, not the area where the proposed renovations are intended, which is at the southwestern part of the house. The closest point of the existing house to the rear property line is 6 meters. Again, not the area where the proposed renovations are intended. So the solid black line that is closest to the river is designated as the rear property line because the driveway comes off of Riverside Road. Next slide, please. The variance request, therefore, is to reduce the watercourse setback from 30 meters from the top of bank of the Caucila River to 3 meters, and to reduce the rear parcel line setback from 7.5 meters to 6 meters. And for all of the reasons given in this presentation, the planner recommends that the variance request be granted. So the next slide includes the recommendation. That it be recommended to the board that the development variance permit be issued. I'm sure Ms. Harrison will read the entire thing to you. I just wanted to also point out at this point that one of the provisions of the draft development variance permit is that future development or redevelopment of the site shall not increase the footprint of the home or increase the extent of the lot coverage beyond what exists at the time of issuance of the permit. So that was the reason for including the diagram by the surveyor that shows exactly what the footprint of the home is at this time. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Welcome, Mr. Hawks. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Suderman or the applicant? Seeing none, I will go to the director of the area.
I'm really thrilled to move the motion, and I'll speak to it if I have a seconder. Great.
Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
So the community is excited that Mr. Hawks has bought the old Fleetwood house. And Jack Fleetwood, everyone knows, is a historian and prospector and logger and whatever from way back. And his house sits on the corner of Riverside and Caucila, so it's really a community landmark. And Mr. Hawks is doing what looks to be a fabulous restoration job. And I know that he's interested in helping with restoration down on the lower part of the property, which is close to the river, the lower bank. And I'm pretty pleased about that too. So I am thrilled that this is happening.
Thank you, Alison.
Welcome. We love those kind of community members.
Can I just say, can I tell a little story quickly about Jack Fleetwood? So when you come into Cowichan Station, there's a sign that says Cowichan Station, Hub of the Universe, and we named our community gathering place the Hub because Jack Fleetwood used to go up to the school annually to give a little talk to the kids about the history of the area, and he always told them, "Remember, Cowichan Station is the hub of the universe." So that's where that comes from.
That's so cute. Thanks for sharing that, and good luck with your renovations, Mr. Hawks. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion's unanimous. On to the next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe it was at this point you wanted to reorder the agenda and bring item R10 forward.
Thank you. Those two guys in the gallery sleeping, they're next. Okay.
You ready to go? Thank you, Madam Chair. The application before you presents a proposal to amend the zoning and OCP designation of the subject properties. If we can flip to the next slide. These subject properties are located off of Lodgepole Road and Partridge Road, just south of the Mill Bay Center. The properties are owned by Brentwood School and are currently used as staff housing or staff accommodation. The existing zoning is R3 Village Residential, and the OCP designates the properties residential. Next slide, please. These are the proposed plans as of today for the child care facility for approximately 44 children. The plans include activity spaces, washroom facilities, kitchen, storage, and outdoor areas. The access to the property would be off Lodgepole Road, with parking spaces just adjacent to their lot, a lot that they also own. Just on the top right-hand corner there, you can see a bit of a map survey plan showing that the location of the proposed child care facility
would be to the west of the Trans-Canada Highway. Next slide, please. This application also seeks to rezone properties on the east side of the Trans-Canada Highway. The proposed plans for these properties is to consolidate the properties identified in black hatching there, owned by the school, and to rezone to P2A, which is a private school institutional zone, and the same zone that the rest of the school is already zoned as. The zone would allow for a number of institutional uses, including childcare facility, indoor and outdoor recreation, as well as staff accommodation. With that, I present to you the recommendation.
I'll go to the alternate director, Harrison, for the area.
Right. I think we have two issues here. The first one is that when the daycare proposal was brought forward, that was the only application, and the APC at the time was quite enthusiastic. The project came back to the APC, and this time it was sort of stated that either they get the other zoning on the east side or, no daycare, and it's kind of disappeared from there. So this is a proposal. The APC wanted more information about what was going to be proposed on the other side. So I think it's quite appropriate that this be sent back to the APC, because there's a couple of things at play here. And one is, I think one of the biggest concerns may be removing what is residential property into a institutional zoning, which certainly affects the taxation in the area. And you've got people who are going to be living there who won't be paying taxes to the school, and people in between. If you look at the lots on the east side, you'll see that there's a lot in between. So I think there's a couple of things at play. So I would definitely move the recommendation and to go back to the APC for their consideration of what they want to do with it.
Thank you, Director Harrison. Sorry, first I forgot to ask the applicants if they wanted to add anything. So before we move and second that, is there anything? Yep, they're going to come forward.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So yeah, just would like to speak to that. To be clear, when we first came to the CVRD, it was Frank Limshoe who recommended that we apply for the zoning appropriately for all those lands. So we're just following basically staff recommendation when we did that. Then moving down the road, what we ended up doing is the APC asked us to provide sort of further concepts on what we think the school lands would be used for. And so that's when, included in Emily's presentation there, we've showed some staff housing. As we all know, staff housing in basically Mill Bay, but all of the Cowichan Valley is difficult, all housing. And so that's what we've done as we've come back. The challenge that we have today is we were really lucky in getting a $1.5 million grant for this project. That was 2020 dollars, and things have certainly escalated. So we have some concerns over this 2-year delay that the project is still can move forward, but we really want to do that for the community. We think childcare spaces are really hard to come by, and so we would like to move forward with this. We, because of COVID, have gone back to the Childcare Spaces BC twice now, a few times, and asked for extensions, and a few were granted, but the last 2 have been denied. They want us to move forward with this project. And so we only have until the end of June before we have to basically give the money back. So unfortunately, sort of option 1, which is to go back to the APC, which we provided what they've asked for, that would unfortunately put us past our deadline. If it's referred to, I think the 2 options, or the 2 sort of recommendations, option 2 was a traffic study and then an environmental study based on the stream. There's actually not a stream on that property, and I've been working with Emily frantically in the last few days. It's, I think, just a GIS mapping issue that doesn't exist, and we have a biologist report to suggest that. And then the other is the traffic study. And of course, unfortunately, given the tight deadlines, we don't have time to now go back and do that. That's quite a late request. But I hope that, our history in the community and also the fact that our kids use that road, that intersection, those properties, safety and traffic safety is of the utmost priority. And so we would, and we currently also have an application in to purchase Lashburn Road for exactly the same reasons of student safety and pedestrian safety and community safety. So I hope that the directors understand that that's a top priority for us, and whatever we do there in terms of staff housing, it also shows a playing field, which I think would be a great community amenity. As we know, the Rotary groups there in sort of 5 weeks holding their biggest fundraiser, the Easter egg hunt for all the kids in Mill Bay were there. So I think the green space and the staff housing is a great use of those spaces. I think the child care facility would be fantastic. It's just, unfortunately, given COVID and the timelines, we sort of have to make a decision today to move forward with this. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and certainly here for any more questions.
I'll go to Director Harrison and then Director Yanni DiNardo.
Is there any reason why they can't go forward with the daycare portion of this application? Because the other is got, I think, major implications for the question. And it concerns me something else that was said here about applying for Lashburn Road, that road is identified in our transportation plan as a major network for cyclists, etc., through Mill Bay. So now the tentacles are reaching out even further into the community, and I think we have to be cautious here. I would ask another question. Of the daycare, what percentage of the daycare is going to be available for the community, and how much strictly for the school?
Yeah, so I think there's two questions there. The first one is the land, unfortunately, is hitched across the highway, so it affects both pieces. It's not like they're separate parcels. The land is also being consolidated into one parcel now. So what the school can't end up with is a partial zoning across, sort of one piece of land. The other, I think, concern is that there's some concerns about taxation. And to be clear, we will pay tax on that property. So there's no concern about taxation. Our commitment to that is because we have to ask for an exemption as a not-for-profit organization in order to do that. And so that's not the case. Taxes will be paid on that land. So I believe that was question number one as to sort of why it is. The other is that we could actually solve Brentwood College's childcare space problem within our own boundaries. This was a community amenity. So to answer the question, there will be 44 seats available. Right now, our staff are out in the community. If those staff members that are at a different daycare choose to go to this one, those other childcare facilities will be opened up. So the net gain to the community is totally 44.
I just want some clarification here. I believe our zoning bylaw states, and the Ministry of Highways would also confirm it, that if a road severs a parcel, they become two distinct parcels. So I don't think that one on the one side is tied into the other one. I think that they do exist as two separate parcels. And secondly, if it doesn't have to be institutional, then why can't we just create a zone for the other side to ensure that it does stay within the tax rules of Mill Bay?
Ms. Dixon, do you want to answer that? And I would also add the question of this assumption that there's not enough time to bring it to the APC as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For clarity, the applicants would have to apply to sever those two parcels into two individual parcels, and that is something that the applicants and I have talked about. The CVRD would like to see that happen.
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to agree with Alternate Director Harrison, and I guess it is because the two of us have lived and, grown up in Mill Bay for 50 years. I've watched bit by bit the Brentwood College take over a road, asking for another road. Bit by bit, pieces of parcels, friends and family that I've had that had houses is now Brentwood College. And they are wonderful neighbors. I realize that because that is exactly what a lot of people in the community think. But I have said and told me, and I just believe that we need to look at this and look at it as a big picture and what is the community amenity here. So I really think that sending this back to the APC is really important. Thank you.
Well, I would just add also, Mr.
Shatlock.
Shatlock, you know, we do value our APCs, and if the application has changed slightly, we would, value their input on this. So I would support the director on that as well. So the motion before us is this, we're still at the staff report, or are we referring back?
Referring back
Referral back.
to the APC.
Sorry, but
That's not in the staff recommendation. Okay. Thank you. We're just going to get the motion read again, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Director Martman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Restated for clarification that it be recommended to the board that the application and conceptual use plan for the lands to the east of the Trans-Canada Highway for application number RZ20A01 be referred back to the APC for comment. And number 2, that the applicant for application number RZ20A01 provide a traffic study, environmental report, and more detailed site development plans before this matter is considered again by the Electoral Area Services Committee.
I
That
would
was the
also
motion.
add, is it possible for the CVRD to perhaps support this applicant with a letter stating that they are working with planning and provide a letter for their grant funders? Is that something that could happen, and would that be helpful to you guys? No?
we've
Okay.
asked twice and they've said no, and we've included correspondence and meeting minutes and stuff. Certainly we'll try, but
Okay, well, if
Yeah.
you need anything, reach out to us, and I'll call the question. All in favor?
Ben's still waving at you.
Oh, I forgot you, Director Martman. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I think, Chair, you may have asked for timelines on this as well. That was my first question, because you were saying, does it have to cause much of a delay to go to the APC? So do we have an answer on that?
sorry, if I could just speak to that. I think the challenge is not going back to the APC. As a matter of fact, that was my recommendation to Emily. The challenge is completing the 2 studies in time to get it to the APC in order to get it back. That's going to be, because we have till the end of June. So in favor
could
of
we
working.
go to the APC without those studies, Ms. Dixon?
Certainly, that is an option to go back to the APC, and hopefully the information that's been provided in the proposed plans is enough for them to provide comment back to the EASC.
I think that would be a fair compromise. Everybody, Director Martman.
Do you need an amendment for that?
I'm not getting that. I think the gist is implied. It's just for direction, and they understand.
Okay.
Director
And I
Wilson?
think that, sorry.
Go
Just
ahead,
follow up?
Director Martman.
Sorry. As just as a follow-up, I think the comment that I would have is that time crunches cause concern for me, and I know I don't want to make a rush decision. But at the same time, I also hear clearly if something doesn't happen within the time frame, this project's off the table. So that's something that also concerns me because I think daycare is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go to Director Wilson to close.
Sorry, yeah, Director Martman actually has hit right on the point that I was going to bring up here. This is time sensitive, and if we delay any more, we had the same situation with other projects which have been grant funded here. Any delays could result in a complete cancellation, and I'm not happy with that situation at all.
Alternate Director Harrison.
There is no problem with taking the daycare application back to the APC. The difficulty is the other portion of this on the other side of the highway, on the east side. So he's asking for us to make a concession here, the concession I see coming from that side is that if you want to go ahead with the daycare, take that part back and you haven't got a problem. Now, to put a gun to our head and say you've got to do the whole thing, or we're out of luck, I guess we're out of luck. I'm sorry, because there's implications for the community that go far beyond the daycare if we start having this creep head all the way up, and creep, I mean the creeping of the lands, the rezoning, all the way up that hill. And I think that the one part, separate the two of them out, and there's no issue here. And I don't think that you should be making a decision based on the fact that if we don't do it by then, you know, this is going to happen. It's unfortunate, but there's two issues here that I can see, and I think the APC would be more than upset if they found that you moved ahead with this without going back to them to let them have their input.
Thank you. No further questions. I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Ms. Harrison, you can't read my mind?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on the agenda is item R7, which is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 21H01 for 12453 Rocky Creek Road, PID 009475583, and that was referred from the November 10th, 2021 board meeting. I'm just going to double check and see. And we do not have the applicant.
Ms. Herrera, do you have a reintroduction for us?
Yeah, sure. Just really. Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a reminder, this is the subject property in question and on Rocky Creek Road. Next slide. And really, I just thought I would generally open this up to questions. This did come before the committee not that long ago. So this application has been revised. The variance has been reduced. The house is now meeting the 15-meter setback with some deck protruding into the 15-meter watercourse setback now still. So that is what is before us. This application did go to the APC now as well. So I'll just leave it at that. The applicants were around. I guess they got a little tired waiting as well, unfortunately, if they're no longer here. So thank you.
It's those 2-hour delegations that kind of set us back, and my computer. Sorry, everyone. So I'll move to the director of the area if she has any questions for the staff and help us along here with the recommendation. Our brains aren't working anymore.
So I will channel Mary Marcotte, if I'm the she now, of the director. So I think just to let you know the piece around the Area H APC, you know, the applicant came forward to them, they showed the revised plan, and there was a number of questions, and they were all answered to the APC's satisfaction. And so I'd just like to, you know, thank them for their input into this, and also to the applicant for, you know, taking the time to look at a revision, and to the staff for making this all come together. So I would move the staff recommendation of option 1. Okay, I have a seconder.
It's moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next item. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is item R8, which is an report from the Development Services Division regarding application DVP 22H01, Allison Way for PID 000336203. And the applicant, Karen Davidson, is in the lobby. I'll just admit her.
Welcome, Ms. Davidson, and welcome, Ms. Dubina. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the application DVP 22H01 requests a variance to reduce the exterior side parcel line setback from 3 meters to 0 meters to replace an accessory building or shed. The existing shed currently is sited entirely within the 3-meter setback and straddles the exterior side parcel line and then encroaches into the MOT right-of-way, Ministry of Transportation, MOT right-of-way. The applicants are proposing to remove the existing shed and replace it with a new shed that will be larger in size. So the applicant has submitted a copy of a MOT permit that authorizes the proposed new shed to be sited at the same location with no further encroachment into the right-of-way. And staff have attached the applicant's rationale and 4 copies of public correspondence that support the variance request. The age of the existing shed is unknown. And so generally speaking, where a non-conforming building or structure is removed, the construction of a new building or structure is an opportunity to bring the property into compliance with the regulations of the day. Staff have visited the site and have found no physical impediment for setting the proposed shed on the lot and outside of the setback area. There's a typo in the staff report. It should say outside of the setback area, not within. And therefore, staff are recommending that the development variance permit be denied.
Thank you. Do you mind? Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Davidson or staff? Seeing none, I will move to the director of the area, Mr. Director Martman.
Thank you. And through the chair, I didn't know if you wanted to give the applicant a chance to speak.
Yes, sure. Would you like to speak? Ms. Davidson, welcome. Thank you for waiting so long. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. No, I just some points to make that to move the building as suggested somewhere else on the property isn't that logical for us because first of all, my husband's disabled, so it has to stay within the confines of the backyard. We also have the Shell Beach Water and Utility right away on our property, so we can't sort of take away any access to that. Our septic tank is at the side of the house, which would, if we moved the building that far away from the property line, it would limit our access to get that replaced if we had to. So far, the building where it's currently situated has not posed any risk of contamination to the water system or the aquifer, whereas we don't know what would happen if we moved it somewhere else. We also like to have the sight line to the well and the well heads, which we wouldn't have if we blocked it with a building. The building as it stands right now isn't safe. It has to come down. I've already gone through the floor once and I didn't enjoy that. Yeah, so sometimes when the maintenance on the well has to happen, they require bringing hydro vehicles in, other large vehicles to get in and out of the backyard, which, I mean, they would still be able to get in, but they wouldn't be able to maneuver. Yeah, and like Jamie said, the building's been here for probably about 30 years. I'm not sure myself. It's been here since we moved here, and we don't have any opposition from any neighboring properties.
Thank you. Director Martman?
Thank you. And so staff, that raises a question for me, if you can maybe address it. And because there's an indication that, you know, there was no difficulty moving that building within the property line from what you could see. Does that change any of this information change your viewpoint on that?
Thank you through the chair to Director Martman. So the lot's flat, and there would be no tree removal. The only issue, as the applicant mentioned, is that there is the right of way to the wellhead. And, having walked the lot, and not aware of the turnaround issue that may arise from vehicles coming and going, my sort of professional opinion is that it could be moved back off, off the, basically straight back from where it is inside the lot lines. So, at this point, no, the recommendation as it stands.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's just some new information I wanted to sort of digest. The other, Chair, if I may continue.
Go ahead.
The other piece that wasn't clear in the report is that because it's on half of the new structure would be on the Ministry of Transport right of way. I'm not clear on, and I know the applicant has agreed that if the MOTI says take it down, that they would do that or move it or in whatever's requested of them. What does this mean for land use in terms of this providing a variance? Does that mean if that building is moved that they have now and need to replace it again, that there would be a variance permitted and that's there forever?
So through the chair to Director Martman. So if the variance was issued to reduce the setback from 3 to 0 meters, and Modi did rescind their permit, essentially that permit would allow them to put the new building right up to the lot line within the setback area to 0 meters, but not cross the lot line into the Modi right away. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So the variance lasts forever on the land, basically.
Yeah, it would be registered on title.
On title forever, yeah. These are, as a new director, these are complicated. Well, not complicated. I see issues on both sides here, and the land use is trying to just separate it out from my perspective and saying this is a decision about land use, not about because it'll be there forever. And I get concerns when staff who do this all the time and make recommendations, have a position that's different from the applicants. And I would hope that there could be another alternatives, but at this point, I just don't see being able to support the applicant's role and would support the planner's position of option 1, I believe it is. So
That's moved. Do we have a seconder? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any more questions for staff or just for staff?
Just a minute. The motion was what?
To deny the variance permit.
Yeah, okay.
I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, yes, Ms. Davidson, did you have a question for us?
No, I'm just opposed to that decision, of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry. I hope it works best for you. Thank you. Bye for now. Moving on to,
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're now on item R9, which is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 20I09 for Lot 3, Block 180, Couch and Lake District. Plan VIP 78710, PID 026726879. And this was referred from the April 14th, 2021 board meeting.
does it matter you made an error on the PID?
Yes.
It's PID 026276879. I'll go to the planner. Welcome. And is there an applicant? No.
Hello, Madam Chair. I am substituting for Felice Mazzoni, who had a family emergency he had to attend to this afternoon. So I will speak to this item. Fortunately, I'm relatively well familiar with it already. Now, just a moment while I go to my next slide here. subject property is located just north of the cottages at Marble Bay development in Electoral Area I. Lot 3 is the subject property, and its history is that it was formerly a reserve septic field area for the private sewer system that serves the 50 parcels strata lots, which you can see some of on the plan on the right-hand side there. That constitute the cottages at Marble Bay development. It turns out that that site ended up not being needed as a backup area, and therefore it was sold off. And what the application is all about is essentially seeking approval to get a servicing requirement that's built into the LR11 zone that applies to that site, that requires any dwelling to be connected to community sewer and community water, to have that waived through a development variance permit. And it is possible to waive a servicing requirement through a development variance permit. Now, the proposal for that site is to build one single family dwelling on it. It's a rather large parcel, approximately 4,000 square meters in area. And the fact that it was a reserve area for septic field indicates it's got good capability for absorbing effluent from a single family dwelling. And so the staff recommendation, this is Felice's recommendation, but I agree with it, is that the DVP should be supported, and that's it. And I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Tippett. I move to the committee. Are there any questions for Mr. Tippett? I'll go to the director of the area. Oh, Director Kuhn, and then
I move.
Director Smith. Oh, you've moved it? Okay, is
Yeah.
there a seconder? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments to the motion? Director Smith, did you want to comment? Nope. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
On to the last item. Is it?
No.
No.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Madam Chair. Item R11 is the report from the Emergency Management Division regarding budget amendments for functions 350, 351, 354, 355, 357, and 358 Fire Protection COVID Recovery Grant.
1 through 6 has been moved. Is that a seconder? Director Harrison, any questions? Was that a question, Director Harrison? No.
Nope.
Okay,
Second it.
it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for waiting, management. Brian, your microphone's on. We're going to the last item, R12.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is item R2, which is a report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding revitalization plan for Saltaire Centennial Park in Electoral Area G, Saltaire Gulf Islands. And there is a recommendation before you. Would you like me to read it? That it be recommended to the CVRD Board that the Saltaire Centennial Park Revitalization Plan be approved.
Okay, it's been moved. No? I thought you moved it, Lori. Okay. Okay. I'll go to Director Smith or Mr. Farquhar. I'd like to speak too. Director Smith,
Madam
go
Chair,
ahead.
I think I'll defer to Director Smith at this time, because the report is before the committee. It's self-explanatory in terms of the work done to date.
Director Smith, would you like to comment? Go ahead.
Thank you. This has sort of been a 5-year project, I think, for the Parks and Trails Department. It's been through 3 surveys. And I think that this needs to be referred to the APC or to the Parks Commission, and also there needs to be a community meeting. So I am going to make a recommendation, and you'll just have to bear with me while I try to pull it up in my use of double at the same time. That it be recommended to the board that the number one, that the revitalization plan for Saltaire Centennial Park in Electoral Area G be referred to the Saltaire Community Advisory Commission for review and input. Number two, that an Area G Saltaire public meeting with CVRD Parks and Trails staff be held in person to review the revitalization plan for the Saltaire Centennial Park in Area G.
So you said APC, did you mean that?
So I'm sorry, when my recommendation, it was the Saltaire Community Advisory, so the Saltaire Community Parks Advisory Commission for review. Sorry, thank you for correcting me.
Thank you. So I think it's been moved and seconded. Any comments? Director Morrison, and then Director Martman, and myself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Mr. Farquhar, and considering the we where we'd sourced the information. I think there was some discussion about new initiatives. I know this project isn't a new initiative, but can you address the sort of capacity and timing expectations around a referral to the Parks Commission, and on top of that, a community meeting? What sorts of ability park staff has to making that a reality?
Mr. Farquhar?
Yeah, Madam Chair, through to Director Morrison. So there are two elements here. One would be the referral to the Community Parks Advisory Commission in Saltaire. Certainly through direction of the board, through such a resolution, we would look to refer the revitalization plan to the commission for the month of June, understanding we're pretty much halfway through May. For the second part, however, in terms of any follow-up with the community thereafter, it would be likely fall at earliest, given we'd be going into the summer months, and we'd be looking at the fall in terms of any opportunity to come back to the community overall with a public meeting. But that would be subsequent to any sort of additional feedback that the advisory commission might want to put to the committee and the board with respect to the plan that's before you today.
Thank you. Director Martman.
Thank you. I guess I'm impressed with the report. I've read it through, and one day maybe Area H will have something from one of its parks. But I think the thing for me is that this went through, maybe correct me, quite a engagement process with the community, and I really think it's full circle to come back to the community to say, hey, this is what we heard and what we did. I just was concerned, same as Director Morrison, about what will it do to your proposed funding schedule. I think it may move it back a year. Is that the case?
Madam Chair, through to Director Marvin, certainly it would move it into the fall in terms of timeline if we were to take it back to the community. And again, if there was any further engagement with the community about any additional considerations or changes, then yes, it would be additional time thereafter to make any further amendments, tweaks to the plan that to date is reflective of what's been heard from the community thus far. So yeah, it certainly put it back some further time.
I'll put myself next. I just wanted to say that, I love these kind of plans, and I hope that Saltaire appreciates it as well. And I found it interesting. It's not a very big property, really, when you look at the aerial view, and I found it kind of interesting that the dog park was not more received, because it would allow the dog, all the issues that dogs bring to be kind of congregated, and it looked like it would make a lot of sense to have a little portion of it as a dog off-leash area. I guess maybe to solve this, Director Smith, is this something that you would be comfortable with bringing to your community, like maybe having a community meeting with your Parks Commission along with it, maybe, just to get some of that feedback back? Or like, is that something, would Parks be okay with that? And would Director Smith be okay with that idea? I think that would be a nice conversation for you guys. Anyway, go ahead, Director Smith.
I think that the Parks Commission would have an opportunity to review it and look at it. If their review, I am hoping, planning to have a town hall coming up in possibly June, which would then make it possible to have maybe some more input from the community at that time and see, if we feel that we're still, looking to have a total meeting to do with the Parks and Trails Division coming and speaking to it. When you look at the amount of people that were in favor of the taxation increase, which would be a 21% increase, there was 62 people. So if all of a sudden you only have 62 people saying we're in favor of a 21% increase when you have a population of over 2,000, that wouldn't be I just don't feel that that's significant enough to move ahead at this time. I think it needs to have a little more fleshing out, and maybe we need to also look at putting a few projects all together and looking at a possible loan as a way to go. So I think we still need to have some more conversations within the community. The report brings forward a lot of things that people are not wanting removed, and yet we know we've got too many features, amenities within the park based on the amount of population we have. But we see, this is where people want to be, is outside. And COVID's really shown that. And it is time. We've had a lot of our facility amenities are getting very old and they need to be replaced or removed. And so we need to have those conversations. So I think that even if the community meeting is held in the fall, that still would work. So thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Oh, Director Morrison. Nope.
Yeah, I forgot my follow-up earlier. Looking at the schedule for the sort of 5-year rollout, I think I heard Director Smith say something in regards to possibly looking at a short-term borrow or something along those lines. Would there be also some discussion in this referral about possible cost of living, or just topping up the amount, the anticipated annual expenditure? Because I think the figure was $30,000, and if we're looking at, I hope I'm remembering the right report, 5 to 7% inflation plus all of the other costs that are accruing and going up. That's, by the time you get to year 4 and 5, that annual amount won't buy what it will this year. So just a suggestion, and don't know if staff or Director Smith will be having that discussion with the community when you go out to them in the fall.
Was that a question? Okay, I'll call. I don't see anyone else. Okay. Alternate Director Harrison, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious because we're in the middle of building pickleball courts, as you know, down at Cary Park. And looking at on the map here, this is just sort of a little technical question. Are the pickleball courts there now that you're going to be building on top of, or would they become right from scratch?
Mr. Farquhar, thank you.
So, Madam Chair, through to Alternate Director Harrison, there currently are no pickleball courts in Solitaire Centennial Park. The plan looks at an opportunity to incorporate pickleball courts within a portion of the existing sport court by doing some modifications.
The reason I ask is I was looking at your price, and for 2 courts, you're looking at $35,000. And I think those who serve on Kerry Park will know we paid probably 10 times that amount for 6 courts. So,
if I may, Madam Chair, it was just doing a slight modification to the existing court, not rebuilding a whole new
okay, that's
pickleball
what I
court.
was asking, right? So,
yeah.
So thank you. And I guess, with this plan, it's great that you have this plan now, Director Smith. Maybe you will qualify for some grant opportunities or have, some of those items that the community can identify as that they're willing to pay for it right away, or other items willing to wait for grants. So seeing no other questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next item, unfinished business. There is none. New business. There is none. Question period. There are no applicants virtually or in the gallery. So would be adjournment.
It's been moved and seconded. We're all in favor, and it's adjournment. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good job.
Are we